If you've spent any time paying attention to anything going on in the world lately, you know there's plenty to be stressed out about. You probably also know that meditating is a great way to relieve stress, but it requires discipline and a lot of practice.
This week, we're introducing you to technology that promises to do the heavy lifting of meditation for you and gives your brain the benefit of a 3-hour nap in just 20 minutes. Our guest is Dr. Patrick Porter, developer of BrainTap, a mind development tool designed to help users de-stress while achieving physical, mental, and emotional balance.
This is The Fit Mess, conversations with world-class experts in the fields of mental, physical, and emotional health. In this episode,
only 5% of our conscious reality is controlled by our conscious mind. But most people spend all their time trying to change their conscious mind. I tell people your conscious mind is like Freddy Krueger. It's driving the bus. We need to kick him off the bus because it can't do it anyway. Your conscious mind can only do so much in one day. But your subconscious can do literally millions, if not trillions of things.
Now here are your hosts, Zach and Jeremy.
Welcome to The Fit Mess, brought to you by Athletic Greens. Thanks for listening while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing right now. I'm Zach. He's Jeremy. We've struggled our whole lives and ended up stronger because of it, and we want to help you do the same. So if you're sick of your own shit and you're ready to make a change, you are in the right place, my friend.
Zach, one of the changes that a lot of people struggle to make, and we've talked about it on the show a number of times, is adding meditation to their routine, making it part of their ability to manage stress and all the things that life throws at them. And Zach, I'm no stranger to meditation, though like most of us, I could benefit from doing it more. But I could not wait to talk to our guest this week when I learned he had tapped into technology that can offer the same benefits with far less effort. I also know meditation is something you struggle with, but using BrainTap has actually been helpful for you.
It actually has been really cool. I've been using it in the middle of the day to literally try and get that 3-hour mental rest in 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally got done with a 20-minute session and felt like I just woke up from a nap. But I was awake the whole time.
That's
It was
amazing.
very cool. And I went back to work and I felt like I was more productive. I was more refreshed and it was very cool, very interesting. I was happy with it. But on the other side, I've been using their binaural beats for sleep training. I've been throwing my ear pods in when I go to sleep. They have a couple of sessions where you don't even need to pay attention. You just need to listen. And then I wake up in the middle of the night, my ear pods are still in and it's really uncomfortable. But according to the many devices that I wear to bed, my bed tracks my sleep, my ring tracks my sleep, my watch tracks my sleep. All of them actually reported this lower heart rate on me. And one of them actually said, "Hey, warning, your heart rate dropped below a certain threshold." My heart rate was running a little bit lower on the nights that I was doing this training. It was very cool. My dreams were also so vivid. I had this one dream about repainting my daughter's room that I woke up in the morning and I explained everything to my daughter, what was in the dream. It was so cool.
Are you sure you weren't just traumatized by the terrible job you did painting your daughter's bedroom?
I think that was part of it because the dream was, hey, I did a really good, so in reality, I did a really good job, but in the dream, it was all of a sudden it wasn't good. And then there were layers of things that I never saw on the wall. It was very weird.
The thing that's so exciting about this kind of technology, and I should probably defer to you on this, but you know a lot more about binaural beats than I do. Since using the app, I've also just been using various playlists of binaural beats during the day to help me focus and make sure that I don't get distracted while I'm at work. And there is a noticeable difference in how much more efficient I can be and how focused on something I can be rather than bouncing around. I already have a system in place to make sure that Facebook doesn't distract me and I don't get alerts and notifications. But I still will just sort of get bored with whatever I'm doing and sort of drift in and out of projects. And when I do that, there's something that helps me focus. And it's also funny because while I'm listening to it, I'm always tuned into what am I not supposed to be hearing here? I must be able to find it. Where's the key to underneath all this noise that's unlocking this? I just think it's such fascinating technology. It's a fascinating use of sound to manipulate our brains in a way that is beneficial for us.
Yeah, absolutely. This is literally part of my day. Whenever I have to do focus work, I put binaural beats on. I put noise canceling headphones on and play the binaural beats. And I have a story. The way I found binaural beats was years ago. Somebody published an app that had binaural beats that mimicked the sound of the bridge of the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek.
Of course they did.
And I was all over that. And I listened to, the computer beeps, but it was like the underlying hum of like the engines of the ship. That was the
Oh my
binaural
God.
beats.
Yeah.
But then there was beeps in there and all kinds of stuff. And I just remember the first time I listened to that, I was like, it's cool. I'm on the bridge of the Enterprise. And then the second time I listened to it, I was like, wow, I just got a shitload of work done.
You're such a dork. Do they have one for the Millennium Falcon? Can I find that somewhere?
They might. So as you know, Jeremy, one of my goals is to live long enough to actually have the world of Star Trek be a reality. So I just want to live there. But I'm not going to do it unless my body's healthy. And that means putting the right nutrients in my body. So I started taking Athletic Greens because I really needed to have a supplement that tasted great, gave me all the things that I needed. And I didn't want to have to take 10 pills a day or spend all of my time cooking all the meals. I try and get my nutrients from food, but let's face it, we don't get everything we need every day from food. So Athletic Greens was a great solution for me. It tastes great, gives me everything I need for more energy, better gut health, optimized immune system. It has less than a gram of sugar, and there's no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, and it actually does taste good. And for what you get, it's less than $3 a day. And right now is the time to incorporate better health, and Athletic Greens is a perfect start. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/fitmess. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/fitmess to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. That link will be on the show notes, and it's plastered all over our website at thefitmess.com.
All right. So lowering your stress, achieving physical, mental, and emotional balance, essentially having something that makes your brain believe that it just had one of the most restorative meditation sessions of your life is what we talked about with Dr. Patrick Porter. He's the developer of BrainTap Technologies. We had a chance to talk to him, and we just asked him simply, what is BrainTap?
Well, BrainTap's a brain fitness app that helps you get more clarity, better sleep, and be more present for the life that you want to live. And we believe that it's the third phase of wellness, or wave, if you want to think about it. The first wave is always, especially in the biohacking world, is you can't outthink a bad diet. So we got to have good food, we got to have good nutrition. The body needs that. Number two, we need to move and breathe. We need to have some way to get the nervous system going. And then we believe that we're the third phase, which is brain fitness. How do we keep our brain fit even into old age? And we're going to have a conversation about that, but I'll talk about it.
We will get into how it works and all of that. I am curious. I know you've been working on this project for a long time. Tell us what got you involved in this and why this is something that matters to you.
Well, when I was growing up, my dad was a very gifted alcoholic. So he went, there was everything could be going really great and he would just find a reason to go get drunk, right? The Father Fitzpatrick and Sister Mary came to the house one night and said, hey, we're going to teach Michael how to relax. And they took him to a Silva method seminar. The Silva method, and then my dad, it helped, he stopped drinking. He learned that relaxation, and they used a technology-driven meditation, which we would call now isochronic tones. But it was this weird sound they'd play in the background and people would alter their state. And my dad said, wow, if this is good enough for me, it's good enough for my 9 kids. So we started doing that. I actually created my very first affirmation tape that I listened to on a cassette player. So that was at 12 years old. And so I've always been engaged in this, but I was never going to do what Dad did. He's a psychologist now. He went to school after that, went back to school, got his degree, got his PhD and all of that. But in the middle of that, I went to school for electronics because I loved electronics. I'm more like geeky. To us back then is very different than what geeky is today. But, we had CB radios and different things like that growing up. But I really got into electronics. And then I always wanted to know, how could we help people? Because we use GSR machines, which is galvanic skin response systems, to train the brain, to get them out of stress. And I was fortunate enough through a series of events to start working with a company called Light and Sound Research. And the 6 of us took a device that was called a sensory input learning system. It was about the size of a microwave. And we were doing some prototyping because it was a $10,000 system and it took an individual to run it. And the EEPROM chip just came out in 1986. So we could start burning our own chips. So you've heard the stories of people building things in their garage, doing that. We were building what we called the MC Square, which is our very first portable light and sound machine from a company called Radio Shack. So if people remember that place, so we'd go get our parts, we'd buy the sunglasses, we put everything into it. Then in '89, we got the best new gadget of the year at the Consumer Electronics Show. So ever since then, we've been kind of doing it. I ran a franchise company for a while to produce this, basically to sell this equipment, because think about it, we arrive on the scene, it's like an alien landed. Nobody knew about LED lights then. Nobody knew about, very few people knew about binaural beats, like the Monroe Institute, people like that we worked with. And so we were putting all this together. And then in 2006, I sold that company and built the unit that I really wanted to build. It took a few years, but in 2013, we built the BrainTap. And I was able to put everything into one piece of equipment instead of having, if somebody saw my equipment before, which there's some people still using some of the old stuff out there being sold by the people who manufactured it for me, but it's a lot of wires. A lot of, so what we did is we wanted to streamline it, make it easy to use. So, and also because of the apps that came out 5 years ago, we decided to move off selling CDs or downloads. It was kind of, there was a battle there between, is it really going to work? And of course, getting rid of an inventory was nice. We don't have a warehouse now holding stock, and the app just took off. We had some concerns at that time, but we have our app gets 28 listenings a month per user. And we only have a 1% churn. So people love it. They keep using it, and they're finding value with it. So that's kind of what got me into it, I guess, first of all, was just, I wanted to help people because it helped me. I was, my first book, I've written 9 books, but my first book is called Awaken the Genius. And I talk about being held back in 2nd grade and then becoming an honor roll student and a 3-sport captain throughout that book, but also teaching mind techniques, kind of like what a Jim Quick would do, but it was from back in the 90s. And still a lot of the accelerated learning techniques are still valuable today. That's what I used to teach on, was accelerated learning. Now it's broadened out into health and fitness, and biohacking, is now the biggest thing. So that's where we're at.
So like I said, I've been using it and I found it really useful so far. And so I know what binaural beats are, but for everyone who's listening, how does your app work? There's a couple of different things that are going on when you're listening to these. So can you talk a little bit about what's happening and why it works and how it works?
Sure. Well, with the app alone, we'll talk about that first because it's dealing with sound. And we as humans actually collect sound from the world around us at about 25,000 pieces of information every second. Now, we don't actually process all of those on a conscious level, a very small amount, only 40 pieces get into the conscious mind. So that subconscious is still listening to all those. And if the 3 of us were sitting at eating dinner, let's say, and somebody 3 tables over says something like biohacking, we wouldn't hear the rest of the conversation, but we would hear that word, biohacking. That's because our brain is literally processing all of that data and filtering out what is not meaningful to us. And for the listeners, if you've ever been at a speaking, maybe at church or at a symposium, and you couldn't hear the lecturer, but then you finally got line of sight with that lecturer. As soon as you saw that lecturer, you began to hear. That's because your hearing is 30% through your visual cortex. So your eyes bring in information. So I'll talk about that when we get to the light part of what we do with BrainTap, but we need to keep the brain awake. So what we're doing is there's a part of the brain called the primitive brain that's in the middle of the brain that basically is what keeps us safe. Its whole job is to protect us. Some people call it the reticular activating system, the primitive brain, the reptilian brain. There's lots of different names for it. But what it does, it's always looking for, is this environment safe for me? Is it okay for me to express? Should I be reserved? Should I be on edge? Well, what we're doing is we're sending very specific tones. Like for binaurals, for people that don't understand that, we're going to send a 300 hertz frequency in one ear, a 310 in the other. That's going to create a 10 hertz frequency. The brain is not going to hear 300 and 310. It's going to hear a phantom sound of 10 hertz. Now, the secret here that most people don't know about binaurals is if I listen to that same binaural for more than 3 seconds, my brain starts to consider it wallpaper. It doesn't mean anything. And the best example I can give is we all have friends that live near paper mills. And when we go to visit them for the first time, we go, oh my God, that smells terrible. How can you stand it? And they go, I don't even smell it. Mm-hmm. That's because our brain is really good at filtering those things out. It says, that smell, that's bad, but it's not going to kill us today. So don't pay attention to it. So the same thing's true with those noises. Like if we hear a startling noise, we immediately turn and we look. right? But if that startling noise happened all the time, like a fan, we would just tune out the fan. Or the clothes we're wearing is another example. When we first put them on, we feel them, but throughout the day, we don't really notice we're wearing shirts and pants and things like that. So that's what happens with the brain. So we're changing those sounds all the time. Now, what happens with sound is our body collects energy in many different ways. The three main ways are not eating food and drinking water. The three main ways are light, sound, and vibration, because we're collecting energy all the time. On our cells, there's something called chromophores. These are little batteries. So another analogy would be, if you've ever been to a party, you didn't really want to go there, but maybe your wife or girlfriend talked you into going. So you're at the party, pretty soon you're tapping your toe, you're kind of swaying, you want to start dancing. And the person brought you said, I didn't think you wanted to come. Well, that's because the energy of the music actually gave you ATP production, and you basically got hacked. Even though you didn't want to dance, they started playing the songs that you wanted, and all of a sudden you have all this energy, and your body wants to do something with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put very specific light, sound, and vibrational tones. Now, with sound only, with the app, we can drive that in through isochronic tones, which are mono signals. An isochronic tone, for people that don't know what that is, it could be as simple as a waterfall in your office or your home. Like one of those bubbling brooks. That's a 10-cycle isochronic tone generator. It could be going to the top of a mountain and meditating near a tree, the tree line. That's 7.8 hertz frequency. So that happens to be theta. Now, what happens to the brain when we're in each of these different states is the brain starts to associate different chemical relationships to our body. For instance, our neurotransmitter production. So when we're in this state where we're talking right now, our primary awareness hopefully is in beta, which is our wide awake state. But we also have all the other brainwaves going at some degree. So if we're primarily in beta, we're going to be driven by dopamine. So most people under stress and their addictions, they're all dopamine addictions. And somebody says, well, I don't really have an addiction. I said, well, when you send out a text, how long do you wait to look at your phone to see if they respond? Most people, they send the text and they just wait.
Yeah.
Like the other person has nothing to do, just waiting for your text to come in. And we're conditioned to do that, right? Then when we get the text, we go, oh yeah, they love us or whatever. And we get a dopamine hit. But if you get frustrated because they're not sending you back a response, and then you just hit it again, say, well, question mark,
right.
Maybe they were doing something important. So that's a beta brain. So what we want to do is we want to get people out of that beta brain, and we want to get them into the alpha and theta brain. Now, those two brainwave states are associated with meditation, but they're also associated with down-regulating the sympathetic nervous system. That's important because once you're in sympathetic lock, we call it sympathetic escape. That means your life is so stressed out that you don't even know what you're doing. And like what's happened to us in the last 2 years, science shows that our hippocampus can actually shrink 3/4 of an inch with a year of stress. Jeez. So think about what happened. If people weren't getting the grounding, they weren't getting these things happening, they weren't doing their biohacks, let's say, then their body can be the brunt of that stress, because stress builds cortisol. When we have stress, that cortisol happens, basically that's going to tell us to flee. But we're just sitting here and we're not moving. Maybe even doing something as terrible as watching the news. I always tell people, if you're too happy, just turn on the news. You'll be depressed in less than 3 minutes.
Right.
But what's happening with the BrainTap is we're getting you into optimizing brain states. So every session is different. You can't have the same session even twice. The brain is super smart. You might not think you're that smart. So when we're talking about the subconscious, Bruce Lipton said it best, and people like him, he says in Biology Belief, he says only 5% of our conscious reality is controlled by our conscious mind. But most people spend all their time trying to change their conscious mind. I tell people is your conscious mind is like Freddy Krueger. It's driving the bus. We need to kick him off the bus because it can't do it anyway. Your conscious mind can only do so much in one day, but your subconscious can do literally millions, if not trillions of things. We have 75 trillion cells that make up our body, and our subconscious mind is simultaneously communicating with each one of them and how it interacts as a community. So our subconscious builds our behaviors. We build our behaviors, let's say, by our actions and beliefs and life activities, but then they build us. They basically feed back through us because life's happening so quickly. So what happens with BrainTap is you're able to slow everything down, because when you get into the alpha and theta state, literally time itself is suspended. You can seem for some, and Einstein said it best. He said, hey, when you're talking to a beautiful woman for an hour, it seems like a minute. When you're sitting on a hot stove for a minute, it seems like an hour.
Right.
So when you're thinking about time is very subjective to the person viewing time at that place. So even a 5-minute or 10-minute session where you get into alpha and theta can unlock the nervous system. And that's really what we're doing. And we're doing it with sound. So sound is really important, but sound can only take you so far because you still have other senses available. And when you close your eyes, you're actually shutting down 30% of your brain's active performance. So that doesn't mean you can't get results. Our studies show it takes about 6 weeks to get the same results you would get with 3 weeks with our headset. With the light.
And I want to bring the light into it for a minute, but before we do, the sound is something that I want to hit on for a minute, because this was something I've used all of the meditation apps that guide you through whatever. Many of them help me sleep. I use them on a regular basis. The first time I used yours, I couldn't believe how quickly I just, the ego dissolved and I just dissolved. It was the strangest thing. The first one I did, I think it was like an 8-minute session, and it was like seconds. I couldn't believe, like I spent a few seconds going, okay, there's some nice music and he's telling me what's going to happen here. And I started trying to find like, what's the trick? What am I not hearing? What am I not supposed to pick up on? What's the trick here? And then all of a sudden it was over. It was like I was hypnotized. I've never been hypnotized, so I don't know.
We call that the island time experience. So when you're so stressed out, you don't even know it. And then as soon as you unlock that, the nervous system has to flip the switch. So you went from survivor brain to thriving brain. And at that level, you basically have, like, when you're on vacation and you don't really realize it, and you realize, what do you mean a day went by?
Yeah.
What happened? So that's really liberating to the nervous system. And we're doing that through all of those different frequencies. We have not only one frequency, we have the isochronic tones, but we also underlie vibration.
So that's what I was wondering is am I hearing, is it literally what I'm hearing, or are there things that my brain is picking up on that I'm not even aware of?
Right. Your brain is picking up on things.
That's amazing.
So that 25,000 pieces of information,
yeah,
we're instructing the brain by the way the brain learns. There's cilia on the brain, little hair-like follicles, that's always evaluating, calibrating your reality to find out. And just as an example, if I walk outside and it's cold, I'm going to start to shiver to try to warm up my body. If I go inside and it's hot, I'm going to start sweating to cool it down. That's a physical manifestation of what's happening even at a microcosmic level, at the cellular level of your brain. Your brain is all, because this is something that freaks people out. When they had that big tsunami and they go, why did all the animals leave before the people?
Yeah.
It's because the planet told them to. Our planet has frequencies. And if we were on a spaceship coming toward Earth, it would resonate between 0.05 and 100. And some people are tuned into that. Like if we're near a volcano, it's going to be like 100. It's going to be very chaotic in things. But if we're in the mountains and we're meditating, like I said, 7.8 hertz frequency, our brain likes Earth frequencies. And this is why a lot of people are biohacking like 5G and 3G, because that's millions of hits. When our sun sends light to the planet, our body's used to that. I mean, that's basically what tells our body what to do, right? If we don't get to sleep by 2:00 at night, we don't make melatonin, because that's the part of the biological synchronicity that we have with our planet. That's all done subconsciously. I don't go to bed and go, you know what? Melatonin producers, get online. I don't do that, right? They just start, it just starts doing it, and so this is what we mean. A lot of people think just because they consciously think something, that the subconscious is listening, right? But our body being the record of our subconscious. That's why we have psychosomatic illnesses, which means illnesses of the mind. Mm-hmm. So the body records those. And people like Louise Hay wrote the book, You Can Heal Your Life. It's very true. I mean, I just challenge somebody to look at what she says, like your knees hurting, you're probably facing some kind of change in your life and you don't want that change to happen. And so your knees, it shows up in your knees. So think of your body like the hard drive. But if we can, I tell them, people that know about computers, there's a table on a computer called a file allocation table. And we have to defrag that every once in a while on our hard drives, or our computers start running slower and slower and slower. That's what we do every night when we sleep. We defrag. We take short-term memories, make them long-term memories, and then we assign meaning to our life. Now, if we don't actively assign that meaning, this is what the conscious mind can do. We can take all the positive memories relive them, and put them into a success reel. Now the brain goes, those were important. I'm going to remember those when I need them, because that's going to be your own digital drug. You know, that if you want to feel good, you start remembering those happy times. Now, any negative thing that happened, you can also change those by making them black and white, putting them behind you. What was the lesson learned? And then instead of those being threats or stressed out experiences, they become learned lessons, and they get stored as challenges met, which actually gives you more confidence, more self-assurance. You know, if you go to bed shouldn't all over yourself, you know, then, you know, basically you have bad dreams, you wake up anxious and stressed out. So there's a few things you can do for brain fitness before you go to bed. But the main thing is we need to regulate our brain during the day, because one stressful event for some people, and this is how you know if your nervous system is out of alignment, you get upset in the morning and you're still talking about it in the evening. That's a dysregulated nervous system.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a dog with a bone. They just can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's why if you've ever been through a bad patch, maybe you broke up or you lost your job, whatever it is. But as soon as you get a new direction, like you find a new girl or you find a new guy or you find a new job, now your brain automatically starts going, knocking over dominoes, saying, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to accomplish that, it's because the subconscious is also goal striving. But if you don't put a goal in there or an outcome, it basically goes to default. It says, okay, what did mom, dad, brothers, teachers, preachers tell you? And this is how you run your life. So part of the biohack is we need to get to the first state, which is first you got to get to the state where you can plow the ground. I tell people, imagine you walk outside, you just throw seed on the ground and go, why isn't my seeds growing? Well, that's where BrainTap comes in. You've got to get the brain into the right place. Yeah. How we learn naturally is we take we take things in the real world and we put them into theta, delta, and we put them into long-term memory. We're doing that quicker when we're doing BrainTap. So now we have more capacity to handle the stresses of our life. That's the main thing I think that people get from BrainTap.
It was very interesting as you were talking about that. I left a job that was very, very toxic for me about 6 months ago. And I went to a new one where I was thriving, and it took me a little while to get over it. And I went to a going away party with a lot of my ex coworkers and was surrounded by them. And for like 3 days afterwards, I felt like I was back in that funk of the old job. So that as you were talking, I kept thinking about that, going, that's exactly what that was.
One thing, since we're going to talk about light in a moment, every person on earth has a corona discharge. We actually transmit infrared light from our bodies. Every person. It's not just one person like Jesus or something like that. Every person does it. And our science officer, Francisco Cedral, actually created the clothing for Tom Brady. It's called TB12 recovery wear. What he has is ceramics in the clothing that actually takes the infrared light that he's emitted and puts it back to you. So we have this clothing that you can wear. So what that means is when you're around them, believe it or not, they now call it biophotic discharge in communication through the fibers of the body. You are communicating with light. So every mitochondria, you know, it's weird because we have 50,000 or 75,000 cells, but we have 100,000 bacteria in our body. That's the mitochondria. Basically, we're not even people. You know, that's the craziest thing people are. We're a community of different activities. Now we run the show, right? We take it where it wants to go. But the reality is that the communication happens at the speed of light, faster than electricity, the speed of thought. And they now know that when you transmit, you're in a room with somebody, you're actually sharing biophotic information. So that's why it's so important that you guard yourself against who you're hanging out with. The energy vampires, there are people that suck energy, you know, and we know them, you know, they walk in the room, it gets a little darker. You know, there are people like that, you know, they're just the bad luck schleprock or whatever, you know, on the Flintstones or something. So we have all of this. And so, but you want to be the light when you walk in the room. The thing is that if the associations with people like your job, that association was there. So what happened was the brain started throwing all the tumblers back. So you remember that toxic environment, and now you have to shake it off again. The nervous system, you said it took about 3 days. That's very common because the nervous system takes 72 hours, 3 days to reset. So you experience that in real time.
That's wild. All right. So you mentioned light. Let's talk about the light aspect of how all this works.
Yeah. So one thing we noticed when we first started, of course, the company was called Light and Sound Research, and the LED just became commercially available. It was available before then, but it wasn't priced where you could actually do something with it. So what we did is we looked at a candle. There's something called the Jyoti meditation, where you look at a candle and you breathe, and the candle just barely flickers. Then that's a breathing technique they use in India, with a candle. So we said, well, what with an LED, could we tune an LED to act like a candle? And yeah, we can. And then we found out we could actually change it with something called an EEPROM chip, or a programmable chip. So now we could take the candle, all fires burn at 10 hertz frequency. That's why people are mesmerized by fires. If you've ever been on a date or out with your wife and there's a fire going, you get a little romantic. That's because you actually started to create acetylcholine. When you're in theta, 10 hertz frequency, your body starts producing the feel good neurotransmitters. So basically you're blood doping. You didn't know that, but your odds are in your favor. So us guys, we need to do everything we can. So build a fire, whatever happens. So all that's going to be there. And the brain starts to produce it. Now, if we can get them even more relaxed, they'll get into theta. But the problem is, with sound alone, it's almost impossible, unless you've meditated for 25 to 30 years, to get a lot of theta activity. Now, there's a lot of people out there saying, I do theta healing, I get into theta. I can tell you right now, I can count on one hand the number of people we have tracked with our technology, whether it be the Wavi, the QEEG devices that we have, or our NeuroCheck, that actually get to theta. In fact, I only know of one person that I'm thinking about it that could actually meditate. And we get to go to India all the time. So we get to measure gurus, and you'd be surprised how some of them don't even get the high levels of theta that we need. Wow. But if you can get gamma, you actually start to produce GABA. The important part of that is, because plant-based medicines are so big right now, right? People are going when you get GABA, you actually start to produce DMT in your own brain. So we have opioid receptors, we have DMT receptors, we have GABA receptors. These all help us to dream and have spiritual experiences. So we start to think outside of our everyday three-dimensional world, because we've activated our chemical system, or what I like to tell people is the most powerful pharmacy, which is the one between your ears. So what we're doing with light, in order to get the brain to be in an immersive environment, you put on the goggles. We started with just the goggle lights. So you have this visor that comes down, and there's actually 8 LEDs there. It's not a lot of light, not a lot of light energy, but it's enough. Your eyes are closed, so it's going to attract the optic nerve. And what happens is, the brain is always trying to match its environment. So it's used to having those frequencies of light. Even though the sun looks to be solid to us, it's not. It's broadcasting frequencies all the time. So just like our lights in our house they're actually at 60 hertz frequency that happens to be 10 hertz. So depending upon how healthy the light is, it's coming into the body. So what happens is, now the brain, we've slowed it down enough that the brain can actually calculate what's happening. So we've the same thing you do with the ears, we've done with the eyes, except what we're doing in the right ear is happening with the left eye. What's happening in the right eye is happening with the left ear. So we can get the hippocampus to have more blood flow. The more blood flow, the more circulation, the smarter the brain. It creates something called neuroplasticity. And that's really what we want. We call it brain plasticity, but in science, they call it neuroplasticity. So you have this brain that's able to transact more information. So now what we need to do to move the brain takes energy. But if you don't have the energy, that's why I think biohackers get such great results with BrainTap, because they're eating the right things, they're measuring things, they're getting good sleep and all those things. But then what we said was, how can we get more energy into the brain? The most underprescribed nutrient on earth today is not vitamin D, although it is, because it's light. Vitamin D is really a hormone that is triggered by the production of light. So what we do is we actually give light to the brain. Now, we do it through retinal flashing, because the eyes are not just attached to your brain, they're brain matter. And through photobiomodulation, which means, for the listeners that don't know that, I saw some of your people you had on. I think somebody talked about this before on one of your podcasts. But what happens is, the hemoglobin, the red blood cells, are going to absorb the energy of the photic exchange. So the light is going to go into the body. It's going to basically be captured by the red blood cell. It's going to circulate through the body, and it's going to look for a cell that's about to die, what they call apoptosis. So before the cell dies, if that energy can get there, that cell actually acts like a negative charge and absorbs the photon into it. Once it does that, that cell literally comes back to life. The Krebs cycle starts again, ATP is produced, nitric oxide is released, which means vasodilation, blood flow. And everywhere there's blood flow, there is lymphatic blood flow. So for the brain, this is important because the only time we detox our brain is during level 4 sleep. That's why in all the sleep apps, everybody's looking for, if I have the Aura, which I do, you could look at the Aura. As long as I get 1 hour of deep sleep, I'm 97 to 100 that night. If I get less than that, now, if I'm using the BioStrap, it's 2 hours because they have a different algorithm. So if you have, and they don't measure REM sleep in the same way. So they all do something different, but it's really all linked to deep sleep because we know if we get that deep restorative sleep, our body basically cleanses itself, especially from the brain out. Now, the reason we use lights in the ears, people are always saying, why in the hell did you put LED lights in the ears? Well, for natural medicine practitioners, they'll know why, because of acupuncture points. We have all the meridians run through the ears. So you could do it with seeds, even, little acupuncture points you can press, you can do it yourself. And so what I was doing was I was watching my doctors using lasers, and we use lasers at our clinic too. So I said, well, how much light does a laser produce? What's the photic effect, the energy exchange, right? So what we did is we figured out for a 20-minute dose of 9 LEDs is the same as getting a laser treatment. But you're getting it in both ears without anybody else helping you. Now, what's important about that is we actually can measure this with our NeuroCheck technology. It blows away acupuncturists and also chiropractors, because we'll say, look, if they have a block here, they have a block here, watch what happens. We're going to do BrainTap, it'll be cleared out. Because it all starts with the brain. Even when, whatever you do, you're working on the brain. You physically work out, you're working on your brain. You eat good foods, it's going to go to your brain. Everything is, at the end of the day, the brain gets the first cut of everything, and then it gives whatever's left to the rest of the body. So in the process of light, what happens is we need energy to do it. So for instance, our study we did with women, 55, 65, these were women that had never meditated because we wanted to get people but they were all diagnosed with dementia. In this study, by the way, is in a bigger study right now at Seminole College, but this was our pilot study. And we took 6 weeks, 3 times a day doing the headset BrainTap, morning, afternoon, and evening. They did it 3 times a day for 6 weeks. And they were all diagnosed with dementia. They all did all the cognitive testing. They all had dementia. There was no question. They did. And we noticed that their left hemisphere was moving slower than the right hemisphere. So we developed some BrainTap sessions called the New Mind, where I sped up the left hemisphere, slowed down the right hemisphere. We noticed it took 6 weeks to do that. As soon as their brain was matched, the frontal lobe alpha was matched, they felt more energized, they felt more alert, more aware. So we had them go back to their medical doctors. Every one of them in the pilot study came back and said, my doctor said, if I would have came here like this 6 weeks ago, they would have never diagnosed me with dementia. So we had them do the cognitive skills testing. They now tested in their normal range. We had already done the neuroplastic change, which means energy. We measured the energy across their brain. We had a 49% overall neuroplastic change in 6 weeks. We changed these women's lives in 6 weeks just by taking really less than an hour a day to give them what their brain needed, which was rest, relaxation, and energy. It's all about energy. So if we can get energy into the brain will, the innate ability of the brain, what they say is the power that made the body can heal the body. You just have to give it the right materials, so you give the master builder what it needs and it's going to build the body, build it back better.
Amazing stuff. I know you're speaking at the Biohacking Congress. I'd love to find out a little bit more about that and where we can learn more about you.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be going to the Vegas show that's happening at the Excalibur in March here. It's going to be a great event. There'll be over 500 people there. I guess it's going to be fun. They can also try BrainTap, and we'll have our equipment so we can actually measure your nervous system. So you can do that. You can follow me at Dr. Patrick Porter, at Dr. Patrick Porter, or at BrainTap Tech. You can find out all about us. And if they want to try it before they go there, you might have a link that you can share with them, or you can share that link with them so we have a free giveaway and they can get a copy of my book to learn more. That'd probably be the best steps to do. Just share that link in your podcast notes or whatever, and they can go there. And with that free 15-day trial, they'll get a copy of my book, Thrive and Overdrive. which has the science in it if they're interested.
You'll find that at thefitmess.com. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Porter. Fascinating stuff and great work on the app. I'm already enjoying the benefits of it. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
That was Dr. Patrick Porter, developer of BrainTap Technologies. You can find out more about him, his work, and the Biohacking Congress event he mentioned in Las Vegas coming up March 19th and 20th. All of that information is in the show notes for this episode at thefitmess.com.
So in the past, I've put a huge amount of effort and time into meditating, and I've gotten the results out of it that I really, really loved. And again, it's such a struggle for me to do that. So with this app, it was actually really cool to use the app for 20 minutes and get the same feeling as I had gotten with all of that time and effort going into meditation. You know, it really reminded me how important meditation is and how much I really do need to have it in my life and do it every day. So if you're ever like me and you can't meditate or you have trouble meditating, try the app out because it'll get you there quicker and show you what those benefits are.
And again, my first experience with this app was fascinating because, like I said, 8 minutes of this session that went by in a blink. I spent maybe a minute trying to figure out what it was I was supposed to be hearing, and then it was just over. And so I got all of those benefits in that quick 8 minutes in what felt like seconds. And it's just amazing. And I can't wait to find out what it's like with the goggles, adding that light therapy. There's just so many applications for this that can be so beneficial if you suffer from depression, anxiety, or just can't sit still long enough to meditate, and you know that's something that you want to incorporate into your life. If you're looking to make that change, this app might be the thing that you're looking for.
And if you're looking to make other changes and you want to keep this kind of a conversation going, go ahead and join us in our Facebook group where you can find us and fellow FitMess listeners and connect with us for monthly challenges, accountability to reach your goals, and a supportive community. See you, everyone.
We know this podcast is amazing and doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that Jeremy and Zach don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.